Welcome into Appeal to Heaven. I am your host, Jonah Schultz. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Obviously, the big story coming into today are the joint operations, the joint attacks going on right now, the missiles being launched into Iran, the conflict in the Middle East that is now ongoing. Donald Trump has come out and saying that there is a extended conflict possibly happening now. We are talking about possible U.S. casualties. And I just want to give you my initial thoughts on the situation, not go into a full episode. So my thoughts are our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He is weak and ineffective. Oh, wait, that's not me. That's actually Donald Trump from the Obama administration. In order to get elected, Barack Obama will start a war with Iran. Oh, that's from 2011. Don't let Obama play the Iran card in order to get a war started to get elected. Be careful, Republicans. Oh, that's from 2012 as well. And just back from 2020, we've spent $8 trillion in the Middle East and we're not fixing our roads. It's crazy. I agree, Mr. President. I agree. And I bring all of this up. I share all of this and these quotes by Donald Trump, not to just dunk on Trump, not to just be Mr. Anti-Trump or anything like that. I bring it up because it shows how far we've come. And I think how far we've fallen from the Make America Great Again movement. So far from America first. And the winds that swept Donald Trump into the White House. The type of rhetoric that got Donald Trump elected, that got him to be such a popular public figure even before he entered a presidential race, was that he saw the mistakes. He called out the mistakes from the endless conflicts in the Middle East, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, and he sympathized and empathized with the American people who were frustrated, who saw men of this country die, saw the PTSD, saw the mistreatment of our veterans, who saw the ugliness of war. And not just the ugliness of war, because war can be very, very essential. It can be a necessity. War at one point or another, some point or another, in the future, for the United States of America, for our existence, will be a necessity. You can't just avoid violence altogether. But we've seen war as a means to benefit external forces, whether that's foreign nations, individuals, corporations. When we look at the wars that we've waged over the last several decades, there are very few conflicts that you can make a true argument benefit the American people. And if we just go back to this past summer, we had people like Lindsey Graham who have been on this bomb Iran train for a long time, saying, this is a quote from him, "I would like to see the regime fall. If we don't take out their nuclear program now, we'll all regret it. We are very close. Be all in, Mr. President, in helping Israel finish the job." Charlie Kirk, on June 17th of this past year, quote tweeted this, reposted this on X and said, "This is insane. Regime change will result in a bloody civil war, killing hundreds of thousands and creating another massive Muslim refugee crisis. Toppling a leader is never as easy as you think. It almost always results in further involvement, a civil war, and chaos. Resist this." This was the America First MAGA side of the Republican Party, really not more than 6 months ago. It was anti-war, anti-conflict with Iran, anti-bombing Iran on behalf of Israel, because that's what this is. That's what this is. There's no way around it anymore. I've spoken about this in the last couple episodes, about the fact that it's in front of our face. Right? I'd say there's a video floating around out there with Netanyahu going around saying Iran is weeks, months, a couple years away from a nuclear weapon since the 90s. And we were told just months ago that we eliminated Iran's nuclear capabilities. We were told this just months ago. And now we are told that we need a full-scale conflict with potential casualties, potential American casualties, in order to keep us safe here in the United States. This is getting out of control. I'm not going to go into great detail on this. There are going to be individuals who are going to go into this at length, but we're just obviously doing the bidding of Israel. There's no way to avoid that point anymore. We wanted Make America Great Again. We wanted America first, right? But instead, we have a foreign policy dictated by Benjamin Netanyahu and Lindsey Graham. That's what we've gotten. We wanted MAGA, we wanted America first, and instead we got Lindsey Graham. Think about it this way. Our foreign policy and much of our domestic policy, would you be able to tell a huge difference between the two? One with Donald Trump as president and one with Lindsey Graham as president. Could you really decipher the difference? I don't think so. Marginally, maybe. Lindsey Graham probably would have bombed Iran on day one. Probably as soon as he was sworn in, he would have had his hand on the Bible. He would have had a hand on his Bible. Obviously, he's not married, has no children. I know who'd be next to him, some boyfriend or something. Have his hand on the Bible. He'd swear in, and then he'd press a button to bomb Iran as soon as he could. That would probably be the only difference. Like I said last episode, the great tragedy of the Donald Trump experience has been our hyperfixation on foreign countries. Here we find ourselves yet again. Think about since Donald Trump came back into the White House, victoriously, triumphantly came back to the White House, what have been the key focuses, the key stories of his presidency? It has been going into Venezuela, Iran, Israel, and then a little bit of ICE and Minneapolis on the side, and ultimately a retreat there, right? We are able, think about this, we are able to go into Iran and bomb the hell out of it. We are able to go to Venezuela and abduct their leader, but we're not able to deport illegal immigrants living in this country. We are not able to revoke protected status. We're not even allowed to ban certain dyes, chemical dyes in foods, because some judge will step in. So the frustration with so many people like myself is I think if we were in a situation where we're doing mass deportations, we're getting things straight here at home, and we're doing a little bit of this foreign policy stuff on the side, we're going out and we're dabbling in it, I don't think we'd have so much of a problem. But I think you combine this hyperfixation on foreign policy, on external affairs, on the woes of other nations, and you combine it with this inability to do anything at home to benefit the lives of actual Americans, and you get a frustration that is now bubbling over to the point of, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Now, the one thing I will say about Donald Trump is when he is in charge, the military is highly, highly effective, right? He determines what he wants to do, and it is done. There's no doubt about that. You look at the operations in Venezuela, these operations in Iran, we'll see, right? It's ongoing. I'm not going to make any bold proclamations about it, the outcome of it, because we don't know. But if you go back into Trump's first term, his military under his leadership and the military leadership he puts in place has been highly effective from an operations standpoint. There's no doubt about that. So it shows just even more how weak and inept the Biden administration was, where even if I don't agree with the foreign policy, I can see some great results in the actual operation itself of what they're trying to achieve, even if I don't agree with what they're trying to achieve. So that's really all I have to say about that for right now. We're going to let it all play out. We're going to see what happens. Ultimately, I don't see my opinion on this changing because we've been talking about Iran for 30 plus years. Nothing has happened for 30 plus years. The only thing that it has really accomplished, this fixation on Iran, has been dragging us into war after war, diverting our attention away from the problems that we have here at home. That's really my issue with it at the end of the day. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I want to get into some other things that took place this week and are currently taking place. And there was this post that struck me that I came across just a couple days ago, or just yesterday, as a matter of fact. And it was from this, what you would call kind of a science-based weightlifter, bodybuilder, fitness enthusiast, and his name is Jeff Nippard. You may have heard of him if you follow anything like this. I'm into weightlifting. I've been exercising for a long time. Mainly it was for sports growing up, but then as an adult, want to be healthy, want to look as good as I can, want to feel as good as I can, and just one of my hobbies. I'm not somebody who's really into it from the standpoint of people make it an entire part of their personality. But I enjoy it. I'm into it, and so I do a little bit of research because I want to be as good as I can at it. I want to be healthy. I want to do things the right way. And there's been this if you're at all familiar, you've seen this kind of science-based, weird reinventing of the wheel when it comes to exercising, right? If you used to watch like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman is a legendary bodybuilder. If you saw those guys in the gym decades and decades ago, really the only thing that you saw was they worked out really hard. And obviously they all took steroids. They worked out really hard, really intensely for really long periods of time and lifted really heavy weight. And then all of a sudden people started coming along in the last 10 years and saying, no, actually this is the most optimal way of doing things. And actually you want to rest this amount between sets, and you want to do these angles, and you want to work smarter, not harder, all these different things. Well, Jeff Nippard's kind of been one of these guys, and he puts out this post that they had a study done. And this is what he says: our new scientific paper, the pump and hormone spikes aren't primary driver of muscle growth. Tension is. That means you need to train with a high level of effort close to failure to maximize muscle growth. He goes on to say, the key takeaway, prioritize high effort tension. The pump isn't a key player, but may play a supporting role. Shout out to the research team at McMaster for helping get this project done. He did a study. They funded a study, did all this paper, went into detail, scientific study, just to find that the key to building muscle is to exercise really hard. Wow. I'm blown away. The key to building muscle is to exercise hard. I bring this up not to go into a rabbit hole about weightlifting, but I think it's indicative about the time we live in that we have forsaken very basic, simple truths, and we have, in some cases, reverse engineered them in this really complex way, all to come back to the same result. It kind of reminds me of feminists when we talk about things like abortion. And one thing that they will say often is, well, if you're going to outlaw abortion, if you're not going to allow me to kill my child, there has to be some sort of mechanism in place to make sure the man supports that child. And everybody's like, oh, that's called marriage, bro. Like, that's literally an institution that's existed for thousands of years for a very specific purpose, to ensure that a child has two parents in the household that support it and allow it to grow and be a productive member of society. Congratulations, you just reverse engineered marriage and a relationship. My point in bringing this up is that we have forgotten the simple things in life. We have forgotten the simple truths that just exist, that we all know inherently. If you're somebody who's never exercised a day in your life, what would you think, just if you had nobody to tell you, nobody to train you, nobody to fill you in on any information, and I said you need to lose weight, what would you do? You would go and you would exercise as hard as you could to lose as much weight as you could. You would know inherently that that's what you have to do. There's this legendary video that sometimes circulates on social media of Piers Morgan on some, I don't know if it's a morning show or something. And he's sitting on this panel with a few more portly women, and they're discussing, how do you lose weight? And the main woman on the show asks these more portly women, now, how do you lose weight? How do you go about losing weight? And Piers Morgan just interjects and he says, eat less food and exercise. And their heads explode. They all lose their mind. They start saying, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. It's like a bunch of barnyard animals screaming at him all of a sudden. But he's obviously correct. That's how you lose weight. That's simple things. Most things in life are actually quite simple as far as how you achieve them. Now, the reason that we come across these type of things in weightlifting or others, or working out and trying to reinvent the wheel, is people are always looking for something that's easier. Because many things in this world, they're simple, but they're not easy, right? It's very difficult to go. It's very simple to go to the gym and work out really hard, but it's very difficult. It's simple, but difficult. So we used to just understand things. We used to understand, right? Men are men and women are women. And now you have scientists, psychologists, you have experts in all of these fields who come out and they say, well, actually, I did this study and it shows that, when this happens in the body and this person has this social experience and whatever, it can actually lead them to have these feelings, and these wires get crossed and these hormones do this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, bro, a man's a man and a woman's a woman. Everybody knows this. Everybody has always known this. For all of human history, we've known this. Same thing with food, right? We all understand, like if you eat a ton of crappy food, you're going to gain weight. If you eat well and you take care of yourself, you're going to lose weight or stay fit. Right? There's you think about it from the standpoint of everybody's tried to say, think about the last 50 years or more in our diet guidelines. They said if you eat this chemically engineered food, it's going to be better for you than eating butter or eating beef, right? Eating this margarine, eating this canola oil that was originally used as an engine lubricant, that's going to be better for your body, better for your long-term health than eating a cow or eating milk that has been churned into butter. And they convinced maybe most of the population of this. And somebody, 1,000 years ago, they would have said, well, actually, it probably just makes sense to eat things that grow, things that are derived naturally from nature. Not complicated, simple. We used to know these things. We used to just know them. Family, right? Everybody knows that a child is going to thrive. You inherently know this. I inherently know this. A child is going to thrive in a family that has a mother and a father who are married. But then a scientist comes along and says, actually, it can be beneficial for the child to have this and this, and actually have parents who are in a polyamorous relationship and actually see other people, and then maybe there's some bisexuality on the side and everything, and they come out with this study, and they try to convince you that your own basic understandings of life are somehow incorrect. And so the reality is we just know things. If you just listen to your gut, if you listen to your just basical ability to think logically, you're going to come to the correct conclusions most times. Because we do know things inherently. And so there are certain things, and all of these are part of it, of this much bigger bubble. We have forsaken them. And now we are in this society that is ultra confused, ultra complicated, chaotic, and ultimately is deteriorating. And so I want to shift this conversation into what's going on in Congress, what's going on with the SAVE Act. But first I want to read you from Aristotle these basic ideas about democracy, right? Talking about things that we understand, that we would all understand if we just took a second to step back, tune out the noise, and just think about what you understand inherently. This is what Aristotle says about democracy. A multi-ethnic society is thus necessarily anti-democratic and chaotic, for it lacks philia, this profound flesh and blood fraternity of citizens. Tyrants and despots divide and rule. They want the city divided by ethnic rivalries. This indispensable condition for ensuring a people's sovereignty accordingly resides in its unity. Ethnic chaos prevents all philia from developing. So essentially what he is saying is that in order to have democracy, you must also have a homogenous society. People who share beliefs, people who share an ethnic background, people who share race, people who share a foundation, a faith, race, customs, culture, this big foundational piece of every functioning society. This is what Aristotle tells us, and this is what we all know. Right now, we're discussing the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act right now is going through the process and is probably not going to pass because we have totally inept, backstabbing Republicans in the Senate. Newsflash, right? Shocker of the century. This is what the SAVE Act would do. The SAVE Act would require proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. It would require states to remove non-citizens from the voter rolls. It would create criminal penalties for election officials who knowingly register non-citizens, and it would mandate documentary proof for mail-in voting registration. Could you imagine a less controversial piece of legislation? Could you imagine a piece? Can you even believe we're talking about this? That we're talking about a piece of legislation to require proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote? And could you imagine such resistance from the Democrat Party and from establishment Republicans in passing something like this? For perspective, these basic measures are supported by 85%. 85% of the population. And here's the reality of what the Democrats are saying. The Democrats are saying this would keep millions of people from voting. This would make it much more difficult to register to vote. This would make it much more difficult. Thousands or millions could be disenfranchised. Good. Good. We need way less people, way fewer people to vote. We need millions less, millions and millions and millions less to vote. It should be way more difficult to vote. Way more difficult to vote. I want you to think about it in this context. When you were in school, was your classroom geared towards the highest level learners? Was it geared towards those who excelled? Was it geared towards those who were even in the middle ground, who were getting by, doing well, or hitting above average? Or was your classroom geared towards the bottom percentiles? Was it geared towards the individuals who are failing? Was it geared towards those individuals who are struggling to try to get them to pass? And in that process, did it not hold back those who were excelling? That's how society and democracy works. Democracy, in its form that we are now living under, is dictated by the bottom 25% to the detriment of the upper 75%. This is why our founding fathers and most serious philosophers of history believed democracy was extremely dangerous. They believed it was extremely dangerous, especially if you did not have a homogenous society. Because if you don't have a homogenous society, what do you have in a democracy? You have warring tribes. You have warring ethnic tribes going at each other's throats, trying to gain power, with no sense of cohesion, no sense of unity. Our founding fathers, they restricted the intention of our system of government was never to be a democracy. It was supposed to be a republic that had democratic models built into it, but it was never meant to be a democracy. Think about how heavily restricted voting was at our founding. You had to be a white man, obviously a citizen, and you had to be a landowner. Now throw out the white man portion of it for a second. The idea, number one, actually, let's not throw it out for a second. Let's focus on that. A white man with land as a landowner, a landowning white man. That's what you had to be to vote. A white man. Now, we like to view that specifically about race, and there's certain elements to that, no doubt about it. But the real reason behind that wasn't just because every single other group was hated or despised or anything like that. The real reason was because our founding fathers and anybody putting together this type of society that would be truly free understood that the people who were contributing and voting, they needed to have a shared worldview. They needed to have many, many things in common, right? In this case, race, pretty much all had the same religion. Most everyone was a Protestant Christian at that time. They had to share goals, right? They had to be unified in their approach and what they wanted from life. And so what our founding fathers understood was that group of people, white landowners, white male landowners, they would have a lot in common. And therefore they could come together and lead a country forward. That's really it in a nutshell. Now, if you move on to the piece of landowner, that wasn't just some. We like to dumb it down now into, well, it was just to keep poor people from voting. Sure, maybe there's part of that in there, right? Just as there's a racial component to it. But the real reason why this was put forward is that our founding fathers, in putting together the system of government, they wanted only those who were capable contributors to society to be able to vote. They wanted only people who could be trusted with the vote. A modern day equivalent to this would be only net taxpayers can vote. Right? That would be the modern equivalent. Net taxpayers can vote. People who contribute to the system, who have skin in the game, who have shown they are capable enough to contribute, who are capable enough to provide for themselves, who are capable enough to build a life, who have the intelligence and the skill set to be able to build a life. Those are the people that they wanted participating in the democratic process. Does that make sense? We have been told that having a system like that is racist, it's awful, it disenfranchises millions of people. That's a good thing. That's absolutely a good thing. Go to your local Walmart. Go to your local Walmart and walk around. Look at the single mother in her Cookie Monster pajamas who's 180 pounds overweight, who has 6 kids running around throwing cereal everywhere, who has some belly shirt on with her shirt hanging over a waistband, walking around in flip-flops or fuzzy slippers or something like that, wearing some drawstring hoodie that doesn't fit, using her EBT card when she goes to check out and buying the most unhealthy garbage anybody can eat, toxic poison, and think to yourself, do you believe that person should have any power or any sway over the direction of your society, of your community, of your nation? Do you believe that person should have any power over your family? Because that's what voting is. Like it or not, that's what voting has become. That's what it is they have power over your family. If you are somebody, let's say you own a home, you've raised kids, you're married, you've been responsible, you've never been arrested, you've done everything the right way, do you think that that person should have the same say in the affairs of our government as you? I certainly don't. So the reality is, in modern society, we don't have a homogenous society. So democracy doesn't even work. So you have 2 options in order to make things work moving forward. You have to create a homogenous society, and what I mean by that is not simply a white ethno-state or something like that. I think there are actually multiple ethnicities that have a claim on this country. I think whites primarily, obviously, because they made up almost the entire founding stock and built the nation. But you have blacks, obviously, who were brought here originally mostly against their will, right? But they've lived in this country for hundreds of years. You have Hispanics in portions of this country that were the majority, right? There are different groups, Asians on the West Coast who came here and did a lot, right? Who built a lot. There are certain groups I think you can make an argument have a status in this country. So, but you have to have some sort of unity, cultural, racial, faith-based belief system unity in order to have a democracy work, and we don't. Or you need to heavily restrict the franchise of voting. You need to make sure only the people who can be trusted with that ability are the ones voting. And so the SAVE Act is great. It's a great first step. But ultimately, if you want society to continue, if you want to have a society that looks like it once did, where it's high trust, where it's prosperous, you need to restrict that franchise. And we have all these conversations, especially coming from the left, about things like poll taxes during Jim Crow or literacy tests. And obviously, those were racially driven at that time. But look at a literacy test. Would it be a bad thing to have a literacy test before you voted? Do you want anybody who can't speak, read, and write English to be voting, to have any kind of power over the affairs of this nation? I certainly don't. In fact, I think that specifically has led to the destruction of this country. Is we have now almost half of Americans in this country who share no founding belief, either no founding belief, no racial don't share any kind of racial background, ethnic background, don't share any cultural practices, don't share a religion. And so we're at war with each other because it is now, democracy has not become how do we come together to decide how we move this nation forward. It has become how do I gain power over these other groups in the country. That's what democracy is now. If we just want to paint a picture of what this would look like from a voting practice standpoint, you have Trump, who won 60% of white men, 72% of white Christian men, 82% of evangelicals. So the actual founding stock of this country, of those who were really the intended group to be able to participate in society, are really still all on the same page. But then if you shift to just minority groups, Kamala Harris would have won nearly all 50 states. This is what our founders understood, that voting itself needed to be heavily restricted to specific groups of people who are contributors and who are trustworthy in order to have a functioning society. And think of every single voting expansion initiative of the last 100 years has solely benefited the left-wing movement in this country. Solely benefited. Something to think about. So before we get too deep into that, because I could go on, I want to pivot to the SAVE Act specifically because this is such an overwhelmingly popular initiative. It is something that's a pillar of Trump's campaign, right? Saving our elections, bringing everything kind of under control, because we have this voting season. We don't have voting day. We have election season. It's no longer campaigns. It's no longer a campaign to gain votes. It's a campaign to gather votes, right? It's ballot harvesting initiatives. It's not going out and stumping for what you believe so people can passionately go to the polls for you. It's rounding up votes however you can. It's a very dishonest, very destructive, and very corrupt system. Everybody knows this because when everybody, again, something that everybody inherently knows, when Donald Trump lost the election in 2020, the vast majority of Republicans didn't think it was legitimate. When Hillary Clinton lost the election in 2016, the majority of Democrats didn't think it was legitimate. So there's no trust in our system. So let's not pretend that this franchise is so sacred that we have, when we're on one side or the other, that, we have to honor it with our lives. But we have this overwhelmingly popular piece of legislation, pillar of Trump's campaign, and the Senate Republicans can't find a way to pass it. They can't find a way to come together to get it done. They can't find a way to get together and get it done. They said there's no time for debate. They don't have the time to bring it to the floor to debate, to talk about the filibuster, any of these things. There's just no time. No time. We're too busy. We're too busy. We got too much to do. I'm a senator. You think I got time to debate? Too busy. Forget about it. You know what they did find time to do? they found time to have a doggy parade this week. The Congressional Doggy Parade. You know what? It's very such an amazing thing that we can come together on the important things, like having a doggy parade. And when we look at the Senate Republicans, congressional Republicans at large, we can't get the SAVE Act passed. We couldn't codify the Doge cuts. We can't codify Trump's border policies. We can't get the funding we need to for certain immigration policies. We can't do the mass deportations. We can't cut the welfare programs. We can't cut the foreign aid. But I have good news for you, because we came together for this dog parade and we passed Senate Resolution 611, a resolution authorizing the use of the atrium in the Philip A. Hart Senate Office Building for the bipartisan Doggy Gras Parade on February 25th, 2026 from 4 to 6 p.m. The sponsors, Senator Republican Thom Tillis. This is your government. This is your government. These are your senators. Can't make your life better. Can't deport anyone. Can't help out the president, who everybody said needs to do these things. But they can come together for the bipartisan doggy parade. We talk about democracy. We talk about, is our voting demographics, are they capable of coming together in a democracy? That's one question. And I think I've given you my opinion on that. But the other question we have to ask ourselves, if these are our elected representatives, these are the people that went through the democratic process and were elected by these various groups of people and put in power. And they were put in power to do certain things. And this is happening around the West. And they continuously, regardless of who's in power, left or right, they refuse to do those things. I think that's very apparent to all of us. If that is the case, the question that we then have to ask is our system of government still legitimate? Is our system of government still viable moving forward? And by system of government, I mean our system of government has shifted from the standpoint of how we vote, how we have power over it, how the power is kind of distributed amongst it. But the question is our system, separation of powers, the process of legislation, our judicial system, is it still viable to keep in place and maintain a free functioning society? Because when I look at something like this bipartisan Mardi Gras parade, in the midst of chaos, when this is days before we're about to go bomb a foreign country, we have an economy that sucks. We still have an invasion of this country, although it's not happening on the southern border illegally. It's still happening legally, where we're bringing millions of people in here. Our demographics are still shifting like crazy. Our culture is still rotting. America is not being made great again, certainly. We are throwing parades for dogs and puppies in our halls of power. It feels like we are kind of in that the Nero fiddled as Rome burned stage of the United States. That we have these elites, and in doing these type of things on camera, what they are basically telling you is, I just don't care about you. And I'm not scared of you. I don't care what you think. I have the power and you don't. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to go to my cocktail parties. I'm going to throw my parades. And guess what? You're going to reelect me next time. And I'm going to laugh about it to my buddies. Is this system of government even viable? There are many on the right, especially, who are starting to say, if we can't get anything done through this system, if and a lot of people make the excuse for Trump, and it may be a legitimate excuse. They'll say, well, he can't do anything because the congressional Republicans won't help him, or the judicial system stops him. These rogue judges, they stop him at every turn. And that is true. Both of those things are true. So the question then we have to ask ourselves is this system redeemable, or do we need to burn it all down? Do we need, and this is what a lot of right-wing people are leaning towards now, are saying, do we need simply just a strong executive? With the problems that we are facing, do we need a Caesar, for example? I mean, these are legitimate conversations that are happening. Do we just need a strong executive who says, I don't care what Congress says, I don't care what the judges says, I am going to do this? For example, if Trump said tomorrow, I don't care what Congress does, I don't care what judges say, I don't care what local governments say, I'm going into every city, I'm using the force of the U.S. military, the strongest military on earth, that apparently we can do whatever we want in every other country in the globe, I'm going to sweep through the United States and I'm going to deport 10 million people this year. If he decided that, would he be wrong in circumventing the checks and balances, or would he be just in that he was doing what must be done to save a nation? And so it goes back to our original conversation about the demographics, about the franchise of voting. Because that enfranchisement of all of these groups of people have led to this current situation, has led to the ability for these tyrants, these little despots, these little clowns in our Senate, jesters, allowed them to have this power, allowed our nation to steadily move in this direction to the point where it feels like we have no alternative than to just have some sort of strong man rescue us. And this is what happens. You want to look at Nazi Germany, you want to look at Spain, Francisco Franco, you want to look at some of these what we consider tyrants. These people were swept into power by overwhelming popularity of people who said we need to be rescued from our current situation because those in control are so corrupt and will not help us. If we don't fix this, if we don't get it right, if we can't figure out a way to redeem the system, then that is the inevitable conclusion. People will get so desperate, so angry that they will turn to somebody who promises to solve their problems and will do so regardless of the system in place. And if you're somebody like me, as each day goes on, that option sounds more and more attractive. So we either have to go in that direction or very much to a harsh degree restrict the right to vote, to make sure the people who are contributing to our society, who have a shared belief system, are the ones who are dictating the future of this country. Because think about this, for example. You are somebody, let's just say you're like me. You are somebody, owns a home, has a family, has a full-time job, pays taxes, contributes to society, has never been arrested, has never done anything that would have a bad mark on your legacy or your family, or you've done everything right. Not everything right, like you've never made a mistake, but everything right from the standpoint of you've always done what you were told to do to be successful and to be a good member of society. You were always told that, and you did it. Do you think that somebody who just got off a boat and got some papers 5 minutes ago should have the same power that you do in our system? That's a question you need to think about. That's a question we all need to think about and decide what's going to be next for us as a nation. So let's pray for our president. Let's pray for our people. Let's pray for the people of Iran, of Israel, of the Middle East, of the United States, of our servicemen and women, that the loss of life can be minimal, that we can come to a conclusion of this conflict that will ultimately be for the benefit of the United States and for everybody involved, and that our leaders will make the decisions that will truly benefit their own people. Sometimes that's all you can do. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Appeal to Heaven with Jonas Schultz. Make sure you're hitting subscribe, liking, sharing, and I'll see you here next time.